Here at Stories of Hope, Kerry Atherton's mission is to give people a platform to share their stories of hope with the world. We also want to provide the same chance to businesses that are passionate about mental health and want to support the podcast. If you'd like to partner with Stories of Hope and advertise your services on this podcast, send a message to kerry@empowerlifesolutions.com.au with your details. Now, on with the episode. In times of trauma and adversity, we must create space for connection by sharing a story of hope. Welcome to Stories of Hope Worldwide, hosted by Kerry Atherton. This podcast shares inspiring stories of individuals who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger, offering hope and resilience to listeners all over the world. Join Kerry, the founder of Stories of Hope, every week to hear these remarkable journeys and find strength to overcome your adversity. Now, let's listen in to this week's conversation.
Welcome to another episode of Stories of Hope Worldwide. Today I'm honoured to have an amazing guest, Jennifer Heng, all the way from Singapore. Jennifer is the director at an organisation called Safe Place and the author of a book, Walking Out of Secret Shame. She's been named one of 10 most inspiring young people in the world and one of the most inspirational women in Singapore. Jennifer, welcome to Stories of Hope.
Hello, Kerry. It's great to be here and to speak with you today.
Thank you. Really looking forward to you sharing your hope. I know that you've been through some really hard times, but I think that you've got an amazing story. It's something that we haven't actually talked about yet on Stories of Hope. So I'm really, really honoured to have you share.
I love what you do, Kerry, about bringing stories and honesty and truth to everyone who needs to hear it. And sometimes it's important for us just to bring up the issues and the topics in our stories.
Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit before we start with your story about Safe Place?
Safe Place was set up to empower pregnant women who are unsupported to make life-giving choices. So in Singapore, we do have quite a good system of social support and welfare for generally all our citizens. But I've noticed that some of the pregnant women seem to fall through the cracks, especially if they're from low-income, vulnerable families or single mothers. And so for a couple of years, I've been contemplating this lack in our society. And so 3 years ago, I decided to set up Safe Place to meet the needs of some of these women who've fallen through the cracks. And one of the things we do is, firstly, we have some housing for them if they do need temporary place to stay during their pregnancy, as well as after they deliver their children. We have professional social workers and counselors who come in to support them. We provide everything they need, baby supplies and any maternity things that they need. And we also rally around them a community of volunteers who will support them both in the practical as well as emotional side of things. Everything that we provide for them is free and they don't pay anything for receiving help from us. And we've just been really honored and privileged that we've served close to 250 women in the past 3 years. And Singapore is a small nation, so the numbers could be bigger, but I think that we are just grateful that we are able to touch every single life. And it's a very difficult work. As you can understand, everyone has complex backgrounds and things can be complicated at times. And with babies in the picture, that gets even more complicated. But yeah, it's a work that we found a niche, I guess, in our community to fill.
That's so wonderful. And I love that, when you were talking about the 250 women and you said that there's still so many more, but that's very much the heartbeat of Stories of Hope, is it's all about the ones. Change one person's life. That's so worth it. But we also don't know what world changer that one person is going to go on to be, or how many people they're going to be able to impact in their, sphere of influence or, whatever around them, their life, so that's so wonderful.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And one more thing that really drives us is when we empower and support the women, we're supporting their children as well. You just never know what the children will grow up to be and how they will also become will also give back to society. And so we are always aware that we are impacting the generations. And I guess then that will be beyond 250 for sure.
Oh, yeah, it's something that's very close to my heart. I mean, my daughter was a planned pregnancy, but I had no support because I'd moved away from my family,
Mm.
and we moved to an area where we had no family and friends. My in-laws moved up not long after that, but I had severe postnatal depression.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I know what it's like to have no support system in place. And
Yeah.
I just love that you're supporting these women because it's such a vulnerable time.
Yes, it
Mhm.
is.
And
Yeah.
it's something that nobody can prepare you for.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The changes, not only to your body and everything, but the emotional
Everything.
changes,
Yeah, everything goes goes
responsibility of looking after another human. Like, yeah.
yeah.
So,
And we can't even sometimes we can't even look after ourselves and we're thinking, "Oh my, I have to look after another human."
yeah, that's it. So, starting this kind of work and the book that you wrote comes from your own very personal journey and your own story, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
the book's titled Walking Out of Secret Shame. So, are you able to take us back to that story of
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm really excited to be able to share here because, I live in Singapore. I was born and raised here. And our society and our culture is just so unique. So we're largely an Asian culture, even though Singapore is very globalized and we're very developed, but at the heart of it, we're really very Asian. And I guess that's where a lot of the societal pressures and stigmas and stereotypes can prove challenging to people in general. And so when I was growing up, my parents, they were very hardworking people, but they also had a lot of challenges with their marriage. And I'm the eldest child in the family. And I remember when, as young as when I was about 8, my mom wanted to take her own life because she was so affected by what was going on at home, and her relationship with my dad was not doing so well. And that was the first time I think my little self was exposed to what I would call it some kind of trauma to watch your mom try to take her own life. And I was there to have to stop her. I was the only one who saw it. When I was 12, my dad then also attempted suicide. And that was also hard because, I've always looked up to my dad as a strong, confident, smart man. And I couldn't understand why my dad would want to kill himself. And I think that was when I realized that actually he was in a lot of debt. He was addicted to gambling and no one knew. And so by the time it surfaced, I guess it really drove him to a point of desperation. Thank God both my parents survived and they're still alive right now. But I think that was the start of my confusion as a young person, the family hurt. And so going into my teenage years, I was very classically the young girl seeking love in all the wrong places. I was very rebellious. My parents divorced, my dad moved away, and my mom just really struggled with holding the family together. She herself now, at that point of time would be a single mom. She was bankrupt. She didn't have much education nor savings, and she had 3 young children, girls to raise, and very little family support as well. And so for me, I started to date when I was about 14 and thinking that I just wanted to find love in another person, but I didn't know that it wasn't at what I thought. And when I was 17, I found myself pregnant, and it was what a nightmare. I can still remember the experience where the doctor said, "Oh, you're 5 months pregnant," and I was like, "What?" The entire world just kind of grew dark, and 5 months pregnant. And I just said, I want to have an abortion. I can't have this child. There's no way. And so I still remember that the doctor was really gentle and sympathetic, but he wanted me to take more time to think about it. But I said, I'm already 5 months. I can't think about this. And it's still legal in Singapore to abort a baby up to 6 months of pregnancy. And at 17, I didn't need parental consent. Those were the laws in Singapore. You don't need parental consent, even if you're a minor. And so, without consulting any other adult, I secretly had an abortion. And it was a very traumatic late term one where I had to be induced in labor. And I'm just really sorry if I'm triggering anyone here sharing this, but I just want to be honest about
Yeah,
that
thank you.
that situation. I went through 8 hours of labor and had the abortion. It was really just horrible to have to go through that. But at the back of my mind, I believed what most people believe about my situation, and that is, you're too young to be a mother, and abortion would be the best choice for you. And if you had the child, your life would be ruined, and your child's life would also be ruined. And so I kind of believed that the abortion was the right thing to do. And after that, I kind of got back into my routine in school. And when I was 19, I was dating a man who was physically abusive, and he would beat me like once a week for no apparent reason. And by that time, my father was already in prison. My relationship with my mom was terrible. And so I was basically on my own. And this man who would beat me regularly, later on, I fell pregnant with his child. For the second time, I said, I'm not going to be able to have this child. And so I went for a second abortion. And, by that time, I just felt like the worst person ever. I just felt that I'm just so messed up. And I found myself in this terrible situation. I made so many bad choices and concluded that I was just a bad person. My life didn't get better after the abortion. I felt guilty. I felt ashamed. I felt anxious. I felt angry. And I felt like no one helped me. And I was forced to have an abortion because of my circumstances. And I didn't want that. So that continued into my 20s, feeling like my life was just hopeless and I wanted to die young. I didn't want to live. And it wasn't until my late 20s that there was a breakthrough. And I'll just pause here because that will be a different mode. But yeah, so that was really the first part of my life that I think as a young Asian Singaporean girl, I struggled with. And it was almost impossible to talk to anyone about it at that time.
And in your culture, is it difficult to talk about your feelings?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You don't talk about your feelings. You don't talk about what is regarded as shameful. You don't bring out and talk about your mistakes. And of course, it's not just airing your dirty laundry, but talking about it to bring some kind of healing and closure. No, you don't talk about it, not even in churches, and certainly not in the wider society. And this would be about 20 years ago, where, yeah, there was a high level of shame in our culture.
You went through so much trauma as a young person, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
How did you? I know our viewers will be asking the question of themselves when you said that you found out you're pregnant at 5 months. Did you not realize anything before then? Did you?
Yeah. I know, Carrie, lots of people ask me that question, like, how did you not know?
Yeah,
I had missed my period for 5 months. I was sexually active, and logically, I should know, right? But there was such a deep sense of denial.
yeah.
It was just incredible. I remember just really consciously deceiving myself and telling myself it will never happen to me. It was such a strong sense of denial that it was almost as though if I wish it away, if I don't admit it, it's not true. And it wasn't until one day, and it was so weird. Because at that time I was going to youth group in church. And because I was quite slim, so I could hide my growing tummy,
Oh, yeah.
I always wore loose clothes and hoping that no one would see. And I remember I was about 5 months pregnant. I went to youth group. And one of my friends from the other end of the room she shouted, "Jen, when you wear that, you look pregnant."
Oh, no.
And it was just totally out of the blue. And it jolted me into reality when she said that. I'm thinking, I'm not going to be able to hide this anymore.
Yeah.
And that was what pushed me to see a doctor at 5 months.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jen, you went through all that trauma, and I know we're coming up to, the point of when everything changed in your life. But up to that point, how did you deal with the trauma on a daily basis? Did you turn to substances, or were you medicated? Were you seeing, well, obviously you weren't talking to anybody at that time. How did you manage to get through all that trauma as a young person?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I think I was taking alcohol,
Yeah.
but it was just one of my outlets. And I remember there would be nights where I would drink so much and I wouldn't remember how I got home. And I always knew that that was not a good way for me to manage the pain,
Yeah.
but it was the only way I knew. And I know, Kerry, you would totally be able to relate to that.
Yeah.
The other thing that helped me, and it was a good thing, I had two really, really dear friends who knew what was going on. And we were the same age, we were schoolmates. And even though they couldn't really give me much advice or do anything significantly for me, but they were my good friends. And so if I were to get drunk and not know where I am, they will always be somewhere around, like their phone numbers would be on my phone and someone would call them and they would come pick me up. So in a good way, my two dear friends who we're still really close till today, I think they helped me. They saved me in a way. The friendship was so important, and for them to accept me for who I was. Yeah, just so yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. And like, for example, when my boyfriend would beat me up, and they would always tell me, you need to go to the police, we're going to bring you to the police. And I was always the one saying, no, I don't want to make a report because I just want to create more drama. And they would sit with me, they would tend to my bruises, and they would even get angry because I refused to leave the guy, but they would just stay with me. So my two friends just helped me through as well.
It must have been so difficult feeling forced into a corner like that with the second pregnancy, where you said
Yeah.
that you didn't want to have an abortion again, but this guy basically forced you into it.
Yeah, I couldn't
Common
imagine.
situation that many women go through.
Yeah, exactly. On one hand, you're thinking, I can't imagine having this child with him. But if I were to have the child with him, it means that I may have to suffer this longer. And now we have a baby, and that's even worse.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I don't want to have an abortion either. I've been through one traumatic one, and I don't want to do it again. To be honest, I think I thought that there were no other options, but there actually is. But at that point of time, when you are so afraid and desperate and alone and fearful,
Yeah.
it's hard to reach out. And this is like 20 years ago when the internet wasn't that great, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, to be able to reach out for resources on the internet was not an option. So, yeah. But I think even today, for even with the internet, I think the emotion and the fear is still the same for anyone who is going through the same thing. And I can really relate to that fear. So, yeah, people ask me, do you think if you had help, would you have chosen differently? The honest truth is, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't have the help. And so it's hypothetical. I won't be able to say that I would have chosen differently,
Yeah.
but I certainly would have wished I had help.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was in a domestic violent relationship for 3 years between 18 and 21. And
Wow.
it was more different types of abuse. But the day came, he was very aggressive, and verbal abuse, sexual abuse, different types. But the day came where he put his hand up to hit me, and I'd had a sense coming leading up to those few weeks that I had to get out. And if I'd fallen pregnant to him, I don't know what I would have done, because I just knew that my life was on the line and I couldn't stay with him. So it's a situation. I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because domestic violence rates have gone through the roof, especially since COVID. And there's many, many women in this situation at the moment who are going through exactly what you went through.
Yeah.
As you hear this story, what Kerry's discussing might be resonating strongly with you. Perhaps you've experienced something similar yourself and are looking for support. Kerry Atherton is an experienced counsellor and wellbeing coach and has private sessions available if you or someone you know needs some help. You don't have to deal with trauma, addiction, PTSD and abuse alone. If you'd like to talk about today's episode or your own experiences, book a session with Kerry at empowerlifesolutions.com.au or check the link in the show notes and embrace a future filled with hope. Now back to the episode.
After you had the second abortion, I can only imagine, was that the point that your life really hit rock bottom?
Yeah.
And what did rock bottom look like for you?
It's really interesting because I can't describe it, because on the outside, I was determined to live life well, because it was like I've had those abortions. I kind of sacrificed my children for what I thought would be a better life. And so on the outside, it appeared that I was doing well. So I got a job, I had a good job, and, I tried to regain that level of confidence. But deep down inside, it was the absolute opposite. There was just so much fear and anxiety and pain. And so it was like you look okay on the outside, you go to work and you get recognized and you're successful. But you come home at night, it just all kind of goes away and it's hard to sleep and you struggle with all that.
Deep down, you were carrying this secret shame.
Yeah, it was a terrible secret. Yeah, I didn't tell anyone. So that to me, shame and shame is such a big thing for us, especially as women, and it's so hard to break that if we don't have support or help, because it's not something you can do on your own.
That's so true. So true. And it's something that, as a counsellor, I see so much of with my clients who have bared secrets to me that they've never told another person. And the weight of, you can see the weight just lift off their shoulders. There's fear of telling me, because am I going to be judged, but I'm very much a believer that we're all on a journey and we all do things that we regret and we all deserve a second chance. So when I sit there and accept and love them, even after they've shared their deepest, darkest secret, it brings such a healing from shame, just knowing that somebody still accepts you after you've told the truth.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is to me, the terrible power that shame has on a lot of us. And that is, as long as it can keep you in darkness, it has won. And there is just no other way. And there will be so many other ways that the shame will manifest until you bring it up to the surface. It's just not going to go away on its own. But telling that first person, it's so difficult, especially that first time, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And I think I have deep respect for counselors and therapists and people who are able to create safe spaces for people who go through some of these things and who have these issues with shame and guilt. And yeah, I have deep respect for counselors and therapists, because I think it's important to share it with safe people who are able to know how to handle such a discovery and a revelation as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Jen, you mentioned that shame manifests itself in different ways. How did shame manifest itself in your life?
I think one of the things that was quite obvious was I constantly felt that I was not good enough.
Okay.
And I constantly canceled myself. So there was a deep sense of that I was not good enough. And I think that would manifest in many ways. For example, say, if it was at work and I would be the high achiever kind, I was very driven and I would get really impatient or frustrated with people, colleagues, or my bosses who I felt were not good enough and I would project it on them. So then, of course, that doesn't make the working relationships healthy. I was always very conscious about the sense that I felt that I was not good enough, even if people would explicitly say how amazing I was or how great the work was, but I couldn't accept it.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. And I didn't have a name for that at that time.
Yeah. It's a
So,
well-known name now, isn't it? It's chucked
yeah,
all the
exactly.
time.
Yeah, yeah. I struggled with imposter syndrome for a long time and I didn't know that there was a name to it. So the sense of feeling not good enough and that, yeah. And the other thing would be it manifested in my relationships as well. I think my choices with relationships, with people to have relationships with, especially with the opposite sex, were really affected. People would wonder and they would look at me and they'll say, "You're beautiful, you're confident, you're smart, Jen. Why do you hang out with these men who are not good for you?" And I'm like, mm, the good men are all taken and no one is going to want someone like me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just going to get whatever is left over in that sense, like,
I'll settle.
yeah, I'll settle. Yeah, you're right. And a good man won't want someone like me. After what I've done and what I've been through, I don't qualify for a good man. And
Oh,
so you get into that cycle of,
yeah.
yeah,
That's exactly what I thought when I met my husband. Yeah, he'd been brought up without any problems at all. And I was, a recovering alcoholic who'd done lots of things that I regretted and things that happened to me. And I was full of shame and low self esteem. And I always wanted to end up with someone like him, but I didn't think that I deserved someone like him.
yeah.
But he wouldn't give up on me. And
Oh,
he'd been brought up with the faith and he kept saying that he was praying and he believed that God was going to change me. And it happened. I did. I changed dramatically.
wow.
So, what was your turning point, Jen?
Yeah, I want to say that my relationship and how I eventually married my husband was very similar to what you just shared as well.
Okay.
My husband just like what we call, okay, I mean, I don't like to use the word, but he was just like normal.
My husband, he's just normal.
Yeah, there was no major drama. His
Yeah.
family is kind of like nice people, and
Yeah.
I just felt so almost like the devil next to him, and yeah,
Yeah.
like
I know.
yeah, and why would a nice guy like him like someone like me? But
Yeah.
like your husband, John said the same thing. He said, "But that's your past. It doesn't matter. I will accept you, and let's have a better future together." And I was thinking, Are you crazy? Did you hear what I did?" And yeah, we've been married 19 years and
Oh, wow.
happily. Yeah, so yeah, I know. So yeah, I can so relate to what you shared about your relationship as well. But for me, the turning point was I went to Melbourne to study when I was in my mid-20s. I think that point of time, I just felt like I needed to get away from what was familiar. I mean, Singapore is a small country, you just kind of know everyone. And I wanted to get away from what was familiar. And so when I lived alone in Melbourne, I think I had time to reflect. For the first time in many years, I had stopped going to church. But when I went to Melbourne, someone invited me to church. And I said, okay, but I'm not going to get involved in anything. I've been through this church thing and it didn't help.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for me. And I'm just going to go and just sit there and don't ask me to do anything. But it was really interesting because as I sat in the services every week, I would just feel really touched and moved by either the worship or the messages. And I would just feel that sense of peace that I've not felt in a long time. And so when I returned home after a year, I decided that I'm just going to try and keep this up. So I started going to church again. And I then went to attend discipleship training school with Youth with a Mission,
Oh,
a Christian organization. Yeah, it was really something that was very random, was not in my plan. I had to take leave for it. My mother was thinking, my mother really thought I had gone crazy. So I went for the course, and for 3 months I stayed on base. And for the next 3 months I was in the mission field. And it was on the last week of school that I had a radical experience with God. And for the first time I had a sense that he was giving me a second chance at my life. I can't describe it in words because it was just so otherworldly. And I realized that I could be forgiven. I realized that I'm loved. And I realized that I was not a reject. And all this just happened in my heart. And when I realized that, actually, I cried for a week. I remember just being so emotionally
yeah,
triggered. And I
yeah,
cried for a week. I had friends who were around me who just will try to understand what I was going through. But at the end of that week, it was like I became, it almost felt like I was a new person. I had a newfound hope, and it was just like something just set me free, like something lifted. And that would be the turning point. I mean, it wasn't like all my problems disappeared and just magically got better, but it was a sense that there is hope and you can try again, Jen. It's not the end.
wow,
There is a new beginning. With that little bit of faith and hope that I had in my heart, I said, okay, I'm going to try again to live my life. That was, I was in my late 20s, and I'm in my late 40s now. And I remember that even today, I know that experience was very real because I can still feel the effects of it today. The,
yeah,
the reality of the sense that I was given a second chance.
yeah.
So yeah, so that was the turning point.
What a wonderful feeling that is to know that you're forgiven. And I have so many people, they make comments about what I've done is unforgivable. People that make comments about if I walked into a church, the roof would cave in, I'm nothing. If you really knew what I was like, if you knew what I'd done. And they're all battling with this. If anyone knew, would I still be accepted? And
Yeah.
feeling like they can never be redeemed from their past. I just interviewed the largest Colombian drug dealer who is on the Netflix series Cocaine Cowboys now.
Oh,
And
nice.
he's totally turned his life around. And we were talking about redemption and being given a second chance and making a difference with that second chance, which is what you're doing today as well. But just knowing that we're forgiven,
Yeah.
we can start over again is just such a powerful message for the person that feels that they're too far gone.
Yeah. After my second abortion, I remember having kind of three things that I decided to believe in. I guess it was just a matter of me trying to cope. The first thing that I told myself was, God's never going to forgive me for what I've done. I think I was about 20 years old when I first said that to myself.
Oh,
God's never going to forgive me. And the second thing was, I said to myself, marriage and family is a sham, and I'm never going to believe in that. And the third thing that I said to myself was, life is not worth living, and I want to die as young as I can. I want to die. Oh, I remember I said, I want to die before I'm 40. So I kind of repeated those vows and beliefs to myself all the time. Can you imagine just how
mm,
you just feel like your mind is just filled with all these lies and thinking that you will never be forgiven. Even God cannot forgive you. You're just such a terrible person. But he did. He
yeah,
did forgive
all
me.
the three things. You've been forgiven, you've got a husband and kids, and you're past 40 now. So
Yeah, I am.
that's great.
Yeah. And I remember when I turned 40, on my 40th birthday, and that was one of the most successful years I had, the year 2015.
Yeah.
It was the most successful, amazing years that I had in my life. And because my birthday is in December, so it was at the end of the year. And when I turned 40 that night, I just remember telling myself that the only thing I'm really grateful for is that I'm alive. Like I'm breathing, I'm alive, I'm alive.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
so grateful that I'm alive. And
Yeah.
and sometimes that's all that it takes, right? As long as you're alive, there is hope.
That's
Yeah.
right. Where there is life, there is hope.
Yeah.
I always ask every guest this because when we go through trauma, even though we come to that point of accepting forgiveness and turning our life around and creating a purpose out of that, for nearly all people, there's still triggers.
Mm,
And to be able to keep them in check, we need coping strategies that help us to remain mentally well.
yeah.
What would be your coping strategies that you've
Mm,
enforced over the time and now even to help you
yeah.
through hard times or when
Yeah.
you might be triggered with those old beliefs coming up for some reason?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that really helped me was I was intentional, very, very intentional about surrounding myself with a healthy community. Knowing that if I was gonna go down a dark spiral or if I was gonna get triggered, there will be enough healthy people around me, including my husband or a good friend or someone in church or a colleague who I could just reach out without saying too much, and they would be able to hold space for me and just let me, do what I need to do. So being accountable, being part of some kind of community to me was very important. The other thing is I think after that turnaround that I went through in my late 20s, one of the mindsets that really transformed was a deep sense of having purpose and wanting to give back, wanting to
Yeah.
contribute to society. And so that's why I later on I became a pastor. I started this work for Safe Place and did all these things and kind of directing all the energy into wanting to make the world a better place instead of thinking about my own sorrows and how pathetic I am. That kind of helps me too to redirect my energy to something that is positive and can impact someone. And so, a lot of times people thank me for the work that I do, but I find it hard to tell them too that, as I help you, I'm also helping myself. So in a way, it's a bit selfish too. So it's not all altruistic. I'm not that great. But as I see someone get helped, it helps me to know that, hey, there is meaning to life. And that helps me with triggers or if I think about the past or some of these things come up again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So and from your pain has come your greatest purpose, as with me as well. And
Yeah.
every person that actually shares this story with us at Stories of Hope.
Yeah, and Carrie, I mean, just what you do, it's a testament of it's not unique, that all of us have that same experience where our deepest pain very often becomes our greatest purpose. And we can all find that in some way or other. Yeah.
Jennifer, what would you like to say to any young girls or women even who find themselves in the situation of being pregnant and not sure about whether they should keep their baby or they're trapped in domestic violence or in difficult situations? What would you say
Mm.
to those women right now?
First of all, I want to say that I may not totally understand what you're going through, but I can relate to the fear and the pain. And you may feel like you're alone and that you have no choice but to do a certain thing. But I think that if you would look around, there may be help that you didn't realize. And the best thing that you could do for yourself is to reach out for help. Reach out for help. Don't suffer it alone because no one can make those decisions at that point of time by yourself. It's just too much for one person to bear. And it's all right to reach out for help. So whether it's looking for help on the internet, looking for a support group or an organization, or even for myself, even if we're in totally different continents, you can find me on the internet and just reach out. And if there was a way we could talk it through, I'll be very happy to help as well. But please don't suffer it alone. Please reach out for help.
Well, thank you, Jen. And what's your website if anybody wants to reach you and get a copy of your book?
Yeah, I don't have a personal website, but you can reach Safe Place. Yeah, safeplace.org.sg, and there will be contact details there.
Oh, thank you. And as we just wrap up now, what would be your message for the world?
Wow.
I know. I never tell people I'm going to ask this question.
It's such a big question, Carrie. I should ask you back.
But everyone usually comes up with something fantastic. So
my message for the world. The world can be painful and dark, but it can also be beautiful and bright. And if we would just reach out and support one another, we will find the beauty in what can be very painful. And so I would say, have hope and celebrate your life because it's beautiful. Yeah, you're beautiful.
thank you, Jen. It's been so wonderful listening to your story today, and such a beautiful story of hope, which is what we're always, wanting to hear here. So if you've been touched by Jen's story today, please reach out to her. And thank you so much, Jen. A real honour. And thank you, everyone, for listening. See you later.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you for listening to Stories of Hope with Kerry Atherton. If this conversation helped you, please consider sharing the podcast with a friend or leaving a rating and review on your podcast player. If you'd like to find out more about Kerry Atherton, head to storiesofhope.com.au, where you can purchase her books or find her next event. Check the show notes for links and information about our guest in this episode. And remember, you don't have to walk your path alone.